I forgot to say go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Maximum News. I'm your host, as always, your friendly neighborhood Simpsons kin, Max Darrett.
And I'm Obsidian from the Triple S League.
We got it right this time. Okay, now you guys can all stop.
I can do it. I can do it. Yeah. We do it. We do good. We do good.
Miscommunication last time. All right, let's get into the news. Obviously, we're going to give you our usual Activision Blizzard update. However the news update, like breaking news theme song goes. And then we'll get into all the other news that have happened this week. So, more people have left the company. I'm going to be talking about 3 in particular from this news report that came out of Kotaku. 2 people from Diablo 4 have stepped down last Wednesday. One is the game director, Luis Barriga, and this is significant because Luis Barriga is a guy who's been at Blizzard for the last 15 years, and also Diablo 4 lead designer, Jesse McCree. And, you know, if that same name sounds familiar, it's because there's an Overwatch character named after him. And the reason why these 2 were let go from the company, at least in part, is because they're a part of this infamous picture that has come out amidst all the Activision Blizzard controversy, featuring a whole bunch of employees from the company in what is known as the Cosby Suite. And then, well, first of all, do you sort of just want to quickly tell people what the whole deal was with the Cosby Suite there, Saib?
Well, I mean, so this Cosby Suite thing happened more or less right as rumors of all of these bad things that Cosby did. Again, some of them supposedly. One of them was completely discredited, but because it was lumped in with all the other stuff that has like fairly hefty weight of evidence behind it, you know, a lot of this stuff wasn't like really picked through as cleanly as I think they could have. They should have taken this to trial long time ago. It's a whole messy situation there. Very terrible, with maybe like a hint of some ambulance chasers. Now, I mentioned that because in the early days of the accusations, you might have thought that right away before more of the witnesses step forward. You know, how often does, you know, things like this ambulance chasing go in, no, you know, that person hurt me, therefore I'm suing for $10 million. It's like there was a time where you kind of rolled your eyes about that, and that was like 10 years ago. So yeah, there was that. So it was at the time not huge news. That didn't happen until about a year and a bit later. And then of course there was a big stigma about it and bad stuff. So inside this kind of like, let's call it a gray area of the time between the news being like vocal and everywhere and it being some like reported rumors or whisperings, or, you know, some court filings were filed and stuff like that. It was in that time. So you take that as you would, right? Should these guys have known? Was this something that they knew about? The Cosby Suite, there's a lot of like back and forth about whether it actually represented or was held in the representation that they claimed. They claimed that it was, they named it like that because of the carpet, but none of the pictures of the carpet show anything similar to what they're talking about. So that kind of like, that doesn't bode well for them, right? So they're all posing under this picture. And one of the things that I was kind of digging through a bunch of news articles the other day, and if you were casually listening to the Cosby stuff at the time, you might have heard that, oh wow, he's a ladies' man, and he was just like going left, right, and everywhere, and it was just constant. He had a constant stream, and some of those girls, they didn't like it afterwards. If you thought that was cool, man, you know, the half drunk / like, you know, let's get all the ladies, like that idiotic behavior, then that doesn't leave you in a very good light, right?
Right.
And, you know, one of the songs that I hate the most is the guy that just sits there. He lists off like, you know, it's like some like 80 some odd girls' names, and he's like, little bit of this by my side, little bit of her by my side. You know that song? I hate that song. That song is disgusting. I would never want my daughter to be anywhere near somebody like that. It's absolutely disgusting. But at any rate, that's what it is. So take that how you would, and you apply that to everybody in those pictures lining up going, yeah, this is the Cosby Suite. And then some of their language in their group chat was brought out. And I mean, it was pretty bad. It was, again, not somebody I would want my daughters hanging out with.
Yeah.
At all. in any way, shape, or form. I do not appreciate what they were singing about, talking about, laughing about, joking about. I think it's crass, it's crude, it's disgusting, and if you're not offended, then you don't really have, you don't really care very much about women when a guy is like, yeah, I'm gonna get all the babes up here and we're just gonna like go to town. I'm doing the air quotes thing because we want to keep this somewhat PG,
right,
on all the ladies. That doesn't mean taking them out around town. That means something different. Now, again, whether or not that's just, well, what's that term, like locker room chat,
right.
if that's just that, again, you have to kind of make that decision on your own as far as what your morals kind of like lean to. And then you have to decide whether or not that's something that, you're okay with. I've never understood guys sitting around in a room talking about I think we mentioned some of their exploits. It's like, to me, that's just that's incredibly personal.
Yeah.
And not very cool at all. So it's really weird.
Well, I mean, just like pride and arrogance and just bragging about what you have. It's not really good unless, you wanted to brag about how great your friends are or how much you love people. But even then, it's like, it depends on how you do it. It's just, it's not classy. And in regards to whether or not they actually did it, that's just something that the courts will have to decide. Obviously, I think people who aren't...
I think some of these guys are getting fired without a trial, in the sense of like illegal trial. There's obviously some investigations going on at the company. There's probably a lot of things they're talking about, and I doubt we're going to see much of that because the company is not going to incriminate themselves. Oh yeah, well, turns out we all knew that this was going on a few years ago, and Bobby did nothing about it at all. He didn't get after anybody. Blah 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 blah. And what we've heard is that I've always heard the same thing about Mike. He was in over his head as far as like running Blizzard. And it's one of the reasons why, he gave up the control the way that he did and the way that he left and whatnot. And yeah, that's really hard. It's really hard to get, to control a gigantic thing like that when it balloons up overnight. You have to be a type of person that can handle that kind of stress and handle that kind of growth. And I don't think Mike was ever the person to try and run a company that big and to try and keep tabs on everything that they were doing in the way that he was doing it. I just don't think he was the right kind of person. I don't think that he heard about all of this there was one event in particular where somebody CC'd him in a mail and he asked very seriously what in the world is going on here. And the HR department came in, and again, this is what I've heard. They came in and they were like, I'm so sorry. He emailed you about that. We talked to him about that. He's blowing the situation entirely out of, like, just out ridiculously out of proportion, and it's wrong, and I'm so sorry. They said that because they were more interested in covering their own butts and making sure that the big boss didn't hear about this stuff. I have seen this in companies. I have seen when somebody's like CC's the head, a person up the ladder, and said, hey, there's something wrong going on here, and they come down and they're in a huff because they're like, what is going on here? And then the guy who's actually in control of that said area, or girl, I've seen it in both cases, where they step forward and, oh, no, see, no, everything's fine. This guy is just a real problematic person. And the biggest mistake that these people, these high level ups do, is they trust that person who's telling them that. They trust that the person who's going, oh, no, it's just a big misunderstanding, I have it all under control. If somebody sends you an email like that, they don't have it under control. And you need to get down and start doing some investigating. Otherwise, this stuff is going to fester. I have seen a lot of guys who are like low level, like team leads or supervisors, who are absolutely garbage at their job. They've only got it because of seniority. They're not actually good at their job. They're not actually creating an environment that's healthy. And I think that's where a lot of this blame needs to be placed, is there, and then in this HR company. I think everybody working in HR should be fired.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be crass, but none of them had the gall.
Yeah.
Not I said gall, not gallstones. That's terrible. Those are really painful. None of them had the gall, singular, to write up a report and send it to the higher ups. This is what's going on, and it is constantly being brushed under the rug by people in charge of the HR department. That's not a good sign when nobody can do that, or nobody can muster that up, or at the very least, nobody sends that out to people who can bring it to attention. And it is a very difficult thing, and I don't want to necessarily judge everybody, but it's like that's your job. You're in HR, right? You're not outside the company. You're not somebody looking in. You're not hearing this through a friend of a friend. You're seeing it in person, and you have the power to act. And they didn't.
Just
routinely.
It's just further proof that HR isn't there to actually help the customers, or there to help protect the company. Exactly. And it seems like that's just a constant universal for HR companies anywhere. I can't think of like any, in all the news that you read about different companies, I don't think I've ever heard of an HR division of any company that's actually well regarded. I mean, if there is, please let us know in the comments. But anyways, so there's Luis, there's Jesse, and then there's one other I forgot to mention, another World of Warcraft designer named Jonathan LeCraft. I don't know if he was a part of that Cosby Suite photo. He could just be somebody who is possibly implicated in this culture of harassment that we've been reading about in regards to Blizzard.
I've heard rumors that everybody that was involved in organizing the cube crawls are on their way out.
Good.
So again, I want to emphasize that the cube crawls sound really bad to me, but it takes on a completely different light if it was a drinking game with an obstacle course set up when people weren't in their cubicles, or whether there were people in those cubicles, and if the majority of the cubicles where they went to had women wearing skirts.
Right.
That immediately changes the story. One from, come on guys, why are you wasting your time? Are you in college? Are you 15? Like, what is wrong with you? To, okay, that's a criminal complaint that the police need to be called, because this is legitimate physical harassment, and it is illegal and should be illegal everywhere. That is absolutely stupid.
Yeah. No matter what, it's not good. What we're trying to figure out is to what degree it wasn't good.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what does cube crawl mean? What's the definition, the specific definition of that? And then once we get to the bottom of that, we can start doling out the appropriate punishment to whoever deserves it. Hopefully.
But this is just a reminder, guys. Whatever you do not drink on the job.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
Ever. And do not drink till you're plastered at a company events. Like, do not do that at all. Ever. It is just such a bad idea. I've very rarely heard of this being, a part of the culture at a company and it ending well. Like, it's just so bad. You want to have fun? Go do like an escape room, or like, some like cool like game or something like that. Like, do games, maybe go to a casino, stuff like that. Do that, have fun, but don't drink, because you don't want your boss to see you when you're hammered, and you don't want to see your boss when he's hammered either. He, she, whatever. It's like in either one of those scenarios, that's going to lead to some really awkward moments. Now, I know that there's some cultures where that's really, 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 really the thing to do, and there is a lot of like problems even there when it's ingrained into the culture and it's normal, and they still have problems with it. So if another culture couldn't do it after like a couple hundred years of trying, don't think you can do it and get away with it.
Yeah. I would say, though, the one time that I would want to see my boss hammered is if my boss was, kind of a piece of crap, and I just walked in on him and he happened to be hammered. I could use that against him as blackmail so I could sue the company for millions of dollars. But the likelihood of something like that ever happening is nil to impossible. Yeah. Anyways, that's a Blizzard update. Of course, we'll keep you guys updated about all the stuff that's going to be happening. Obviously, this is something that's still pretty huge, and there'll be more stuff happening in the next few weeks. Hopefully good stuff like what we see here. Let's move on to the next story. Could be some potentially good news. Saib, I love Grand Theft Auto. How
much do you love Grand Theft Auto?
Honestly, I think the number one game that I've played more than any other game in my life is probably GTA 5. When that game, came out in 2013, it was the game that I've been looking forward to more than any other game in my lifetime, the only exception probably being Halo 2. And when it came out, it felt like all my expectations were met. And the only time that I think a game had ever completely met my expectations and I'd spent so much time with was GTA San Andreas. And on my top 10 list of all-time favorite games, GTA San Andreas and GTA 5 occupy the same spot, just in terms of how immaculate those experiences were, how many hours were wasted, and how I do not regret all those hours of my life wasted because I just had so much fun. And I've always thought about going back to playing GTA San Andreas in particular, but it's kind of hard because what GTA 5 especially did, but to a certain degree GTA 4, was take the Grand Theft Auto experience and just turn it up to 11 in so many different ways, especially to some degree with the online stuff. And I'm not talking about the microtransaction stuff because obviously that sucks, but just in terms of some of the nutty stuff that you can do in GTA Online with your friends, and especially if you're playing with competent players, it's the pinnacle of GTA experiences. And because of that, it's kind of hard to go back to the games that we played on the PS2 and the original Xbox back in the day. But if there were a reason for me to come back and play those original games, it would be like a really good mod or something. Like you see some of the graphics jobs that some people have done with the old games for the PC. A lot of them do look kind of janky, but you see what they're going for, and you just allow your imagination to run wild. Like hopefully they'd be able to sort something out. Well, it looks like we finally got the professionals on the job in regards to that. It looks like the people at Rockstar, specifically their Scottish division, are going to be giving us a remastered version of the original 3 games for the PS2 and the original Xbox. That, of course, being GTA 3, GTA Vice City, and the aforementioned GTA San Andreas. This is coming from Kotaku. Again, it's looking like sometime in October or November, we are going to be getting remastered versions of these 3 games in the Unreal Engine, and it will use a mixture of new and old graphics. Not really sure what that means. According to somebody who's seen actual gameplay from it, it looks like it's going to be a heavily modded version of a classic GTA game. This makes me happy to hear, because maybe, unlike the mods that are provided by the fans, we'll actually get some proper draw distances. We'll have the things not drop below like 12 frames per second or that sort of thing. And hopefully it's going to be a balance of what made those games good for the PS2 era while updating things in places where it clearly needs updating. Also, it was sort of going to be included in a bundle with GTA 5 and GTA Online being remastered for the newest generation of consoles, but I guess they just ran out of time for that, and so it's just going to be released as a separate package. It might release early next year instead of October or November. It all depends on how the progress is with those aforementioned ports to the new generation of consoles for GTA 5 and GTA Online. Side, did you play those original Grand Theft Auto games? Did you like them? And what do you think about the prospects of a remastered trilogy?
So, nope. This is one of the game series that I stayed well away from.
Okay.
It is also one of the games that we avoid covering completely due to
right. Yeah.
some very, very aggressive behavior. Let's just say if you're a modder and you're like, hey, you know what would be cool is adding in like a higher res texture into one of the old like Grand Theft Auto games. Like just add some cool new textures in and maybe like a new side quest. Like, hey, that would be fun. Be prepared to have lawyers basically and allegedly beat down your door. And then if you do not cease and desist immediately, they'll go do that at your parents' house, at your girlfriend's house, at her parents' house, at their businesses. And then they just keep on going until enough pressure is put on you to stop doing that completely.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't mess with 2K. They like stern control over certain things, and don't you dare, whatever you do, don't you dare advertise certain things about the game before they're officially announced. Even if they accidentally stream this on, I don't know, like say like YouTube or a Twitch of some sort, if they accidentally end up streaming a bunch of stuff, do not talk about that stuff, photograph that kind of stuff, or in any way, shape, or form put that stuff on a Discord. The minute that you do that, again, allegedly, a bunch of people will come to your house, they will know where you live, they will know who you are, and they will start telling you that if you don't immediately start taking those things offline, your life is going to be ruined for a very, very, very long time, and that they're not going to stop at just like, making you shut up. They will contact your ISP and any other ISPs in the area, and they will make sure that you never have internet access again under your name.
Yeah.
So just so you know who you're dealing with, allegedly, that is who you might be dealing with, allegedly.
I can't believe I completely forgot about the whole thing with you and Take-Two. And not just you, but like obviously that was a huge story back when that happened. It's kind of tricky too, because Rockstar, they're not like a lot of the companies that we trash on this show. Rockstar specifically, they make some of the greatest games of all time. I'm not, as I said just a second ago, I'm not a fan of the way they insert hefty microtransactions into their games. But damn if their single player games aren't amazing. And honestly, dude, I understand, not wanting to ever play their games, but GTA San Andreas, one of the greatest games ever made. And I also still believe that holds true for GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2. So it's it's hard to say how to feel in regards to this remastered.
I think it's generally it's a good thing. I don't think there's a lot of things wrong with the vast majority of the devs at the company. I think they're just fine. I think they have a legal team and a legal department that just doesn't have breaks. They just don't have breaks, and they don't have this thing called what's it called, compassion, and they also don't have this thing called ingenuity. They really don't have any of those three things, because what is some of the greatest content we've seen come out of like older games is in the modding community.
Yeah.
And it has changed and created new games and new genres. A lot of people don't realize that the MOBA, League of Legends, that genre was spawned from a mod in Warcraft 3.
Yep.
A lot of gamers know that, but there has been things, CSGO, or not CSGO, but Counter-Strike in general, first version, Half-Life mod, exactly. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these brilliant new designs and cool concepts are created from modders that go in and build on the things that you've done. And I think that's one of the most important things. It's sort of like free speech in a way. It's like, yes, I don't want your game to be stolen. I don't want it to be pirated, and I don't want people to be taking your game and abusing it to make money for themselves by reselling assets or controlling certain mods and selling mod access, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I don't like those things, and I wish that wouldn't be an issue for you. But at the same time, I think having that as a possibility and having those dangers that you should legally go about properly in a legal way, shut down people who are pirating, shut down people who are stealing content, shut down people who are hacking and griefing and causing stuff like that. They shouldn't be playing those games, especially not online games. And I think that's totally okay. But I think you're an idiot if you are looking at the modding community and saying, we don't want any of you. Yeah. We don't want any of you to improve what we have, because we are in control of improving what we have. I think that is a selfish and very short-sighted concept, and it does not do well. And it's like censorship in a lot of ways, which is why I compared it to free speech. It's like censorship in a lot of ways because you never know how it's going to backfire on you. And you never know what kind of problems it's going to cause. And it never works the way it's intended. And it obviously will work the way that it's intended for a short period of time, but in the long term, you just end up making things worse for you, and you end up making things like not function that well. And I think this is one of these cases where again, and we've seen this before, there was ZeniMax had a very big problem with this. Their lawyers were overzealous. They liked suing people for the fun of it. They did so in a lot of very aggressive, very bad ways. And thankfully, none of those people are working with Bethesda today. So those are good things. Those are good things that are changing things slowly, but it's going to take some more time. And I honestly believe that if you want to be successful in gaming, especially when you get so big that you're afraid of releasing a new game, which I think they are. I think they're so afraid of releasing new games now, because why release a new game? Why take that risk? Why put all that money into working on something new when you can just keep on printing cash by making things for your current game? Yep. I think that's a terrible thing. And if you were smart, you would open it up to modding, and you would constantly, every day, you would go to these mod page sites where they host all these mods, and you would look for what people like, what things are people trying, what kind of cool concepts are being made, and then you would reach out to them and say, hey, we really like your idea, would you like a job? Because there's a lot of people who do that, and a lot of people are really good at that. And I got to look at Bethesda, and I got to say that Bethesda is a great company because they allow that to happen. They have their problems. They have a lot of their own issues. But the fact that I can go in and create, with help from working in coalition with one of the biggest mod makers for Fallout 4, go in and make one of the biggest story mods there is, write for that character, write the concepts for that stuff. That is one of the best things I have been able to do. And it really sets the direction of what gaming is possible and increases what you think can be done with your tech and give you things to shoot for in the future. And one of the things that I'm personally very excited for is the new gen first person cameras that they are working on in games like Fallout 4 and Skyrim. They have these immersive first person mods which really change things and really, I think, are bridging the gap between what VR can do and what AR will eventually be able to do. And I think that's cool. And I think that's awesome. And I really, really honestly think that companies should not be afraid of these things. They should get off their high horses and say, you know what, this is a really good idea. We should do something about this.
Without a
So,
doubt, if Bethesda didn't allow people to mod their games,
oh,
particularly,
you would never have heard of. Most people would never heard of Skyrim. Like
yeah,
if they didn't allow modding in Oblivion, if they didn't allow modding in all their in a bunch of their previous games, if they didn't allow modding in those, and if they didn't encourage that in their community, I really don't think you would have heard it very much. I don't think today you'd be hearing about Skyrim. I
yeah.
really don't think you would. Because I think that Skyrim wouldn't have been as big as it was, or if it was, it would have been temporarily, and then it would have faded away by this point.
Yeah, it would have been overcome
really,
by The
yeah.
Witcher or by Kingdom Come Deliverance or whatever some sort of medieval type Chivalry 2 to maybe to a certain degree. Yeah, it's just it would have been replaced by whatever the newer, better version of Skyrim would have been. But thanks to people who are passionate about that game, they're able to modify it in a way so that it still feels fresh over, well, almost a full decade later. And if I hope, yeah.
And still has over 6,000 people playing every single day.
Wow.
I mean, that's still pretty amazing considering that a lot of those numbers, because it's not like it doesn't reward you for logging in every day. That means that its weekly users probably sit around closer to like 12 to 18,000.
Yeah.
Because again,
exactly.
most people, a lot of people, they only have time to game for a couple hours once a week. And so that is still something that is happening even today. And I think that's pretty amazing.
Man, I've been wanting to play Skyrim a lot this past week, but it's just like, God, I don't have time. But I have it all modded and ready to go. Yeah. Anyways, hopefully things will get a little bit better in that regard. And hopefully when and if this remastered trilogy just does come out for GTA, it is done properly. It's not like the mobile ports that they did a little while ago. And it doesn't look like a hack job. It actually looks like something that they put a lot of love in, and that I hope they will allow people to mod to a certain degree. But based on how they've acted in the past, I'm not holding my breath. Anyways, let's go on to what will probably be our final topic, because we did spend a lot of time on those two topics. Saib, you told me about this a few days ago, about this woman and the whole idea that gaming is to blame for all of society's ills. Let's why don't you tell people about this thing that you showed me?
So UK's Telegraph newspaper went out of their way to allow a woman to write an article quoting propaganda. I'm not joking. I'm being very serious. Quoting propaganda newspapers from the CCP, saying that video games are, quote, spiritual opium. And could gaming addiction ruin a generation? And that's the title, and it gets worse from there. If you think that's bad, it's not even. It gets really bad. Really
How does
fast.
it get worse than the CCP?
Well, I mean, it's not much worse than the CCP. But that I meant strictly the article, not the stuff behind the article. So
okay,
again,
fair enough.
The CCP, they came out and called video game spiritual opium, which was not good, because spiritual and opium are two things that are not very accepted in China today. They are not only just not accepted, they are ruthlessly beaten down. We won't get into stuff. Don't want to get too political, but look into some human rights abuses by some trusted organizations, and it's bad. However, the piece really attacked gaming in general. This has actually led to video gaming being reduced to 1 hour a day for children in China and 2 hours a day on the weekends. And you have this because the government spies on what your children do 24/7 and on what you do 24/7, and how many hours your TV is on, how many hours your game consoles are on, what you're playing, what you're typing whilst playing those games. Authoritarian insanity. Absolutely ludicrous. And this woman writing this article comes forward and says that, you know what we really need? We need this. This is what we need in our country. This is what the West needs. The West needs the ability to make sure that kids aren't playing video games for more than, an hour or a few hours a week. And they need to do that. The only way you could do that is by monitoring your children 24/7. Because how are you going to know? Are we talking about like an hour per game? Like, an hour of Fortnite, an hour of Civ, an hour of Mario is, and then suddenly it's like, oh, hours up, game shuts off, or is it just an hour for all of their games constantly? And how would you monitor this if not by literally sticking cameras in every device that a child uses
Well,
and watching
hold
your
on a
child
second.
24/7?
Hold on a second.
How else could you do that?
You can do, like, there are parental controls where, if, like, let's say, okay, a kid, he hasn't been doing his homework that much, right? And he has been playing too many video games, and the parent can set up parental controls that are already existing there.
That's what we call parental responsibility,
right?
Not the state. She's advocating that the state comes in and monitors and controls your games.
Yes.
She states proudly that that video games in North America aren't monitored or they aren't controlled in any way, shape, or form. I guess she never heard of the ESRB.
Mm-hmm.
They're not controlled in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, well, I can't make a video game where you plow through a bunch of kids. So yeah, that's not something that can be done and shipped. You're literally in violation of ethics codes, and you can literally go to jail for that. So no, it is controlled. Anyways. She says, I was shocked and indignant that there was something out there, unregulated and freely available to our kids, which was considered highly dangerous, but nobody was doing anything about it. It was like somebody was coming into my son's bedroom at night and injecting him with an addictive drug.
Helen Lovejoy.
This is on you, lady. If you cannot control your child at home, if you don't have the ability to set screen time to a respectable amount, that's not the state's job to come and do that for you. That's you not being a very good parent. Like, oh my God, this really, can you tell I'm slightly annoyed by this? Now, what's worse is that there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. She quotes some of the most ridiculous stuff you can imagine. Like, it's hurting our kids' future. It's giving them bad eyesight and gamer thumbs and giving them back problems. And again, this is your problem. If your kids are playing too many video games, you need to cut it back. If they're not getting enough, daylight hours or time outside, again, that's on you. If they're sitting poorly, get them a better chair. It's like this is stuff that normal people teach their kids moderation on. Now, I know some parents don't teach moderation at all. That's why you see some kids with some very bad habits out there.
Yeah, I know some of them
believe that everything should be made for them and done for them and given to them, and that there's no effort involved. They cry like children. I've seen grown adults throw temper tantrums in Walmart because they don't get the type of food that they want because they're sold out. I've seen grown adults do this. I've seen children do this too. It's ridiculous. My goodness.
That's what happens when you let your children do whatever the hell they want. Like you ever see Back to the Future Part 2? And both Marty and his mom from the past are sitting in the car, and she's like, when I have kids, I'm gonna let them do whatever the hell I want, or whatever the hell they want. And then it's like, yeah, if you did that, they're all gonna end up in prison, or they're gonna be like you said, those people at Walmart that throw temper tantrums just because whatever, they can't get that particular brand of Hershey's candy bar. It's just that's and the fact that this isn't obvious to somebody like her, but it has to be the responsibility of the state to look after them because it's just too hard. Then why do you even have children? It boggles my mind. It's like, are we really this stupid? Are we turning into gerbils, ladies and gentlemen?
So now here we get to the worst part. Beyond the absolute insanity that was some of these claims.
Yeah.
Guess what this particular person does for a job?
She work for the government?
No, that'd be just a little too much. But
right.
She does write books. Interesting. She writes books. And her newest book is called The Midas Game, in which you see two lawyers team up to defend a local gamer and a YouTube celebrity who's been accused of killing an eminent anti-gaming psychiatrist. Her background, psychiatry. Oh, dear. Oh, no. Not a YouTube celebrity and local gamer going around and doing bad things because they learn those bad things in those video games. Like, he makes his living killing people on screen. Does that mean he wouldn't do it in real life, or does it? It's horrendously bad writing. Ladies and gentlemen, I am an author. I am writing a brand new series. And I can say without a doubt, this is one of the worst synopsises I have ever read, knowing the author in particular. The author is writing about essentially themselves being the hero of stopping a YouTube celebrity and a video gamer who's killing people by, video gaming too much. It's literally ridiculous. And please don't send any hate towards this person. Nothing makes these people more important than, being the target of harassment, and nothing validates their ridiculous claims like appearing to be a martyr. Don't contact these people. Don't comment on these people. Don't buy the book and then write a bad review. Just don't buy the book. Just don't engage with these people. They're mad. They're crazy. Find somebody who's saying something good and encourage them. And I think if everybody did that, I think we could turn around this world. Because, she is bringing up a handful of good points in the sense of, like, children have too much screen time. They put too much emphasis on online stuff. Yeah, but that can be said about anything. I remember when I was young, the big thing was getting a bunch of ribbons and running around in the center of town with a big post, and how all the kids would run around and these things. They would wrap the pole in ribbons. Yes, I'm that old. And before that, I remember turkey hunts, and before that, I remember creating your own raft and going rafting on a river, which was extremely dangerous. Please don't do that.
Right.
And before that, I remember the yo-yo in ancient Rome. Kids were really obsessed with yo-yos in ancient Rome. They've been around that long.
You've been around since ancient Rome? I didn't think you were that old.
Anything can be a distraction.
Right.
Anything can make you obsess about it. Any food can become an addiction. Any leisure activity can become unhealthy for you. It's like this old adage, very old. Things in moderation. It's like, wow, nobody's ever thought of this at the Telegraph before. Modern journalism in general is quite possibly extremely degenerate, because rather than talk about how to encourage and bring balance to it, they bring in this article that is frankly ridiculous and is clearly a way for this lady to sell more books. They're creating a problem, and then they're also creating an illusion of a fix, essentially. And it's just so unhealthy. And it's so bad. And the fact that, again, a journalistic institution is propping this up is ridiculous. And now they bring in a little bit, some of these sites that talked against it, or like reported on this, they do bring out some info to kind of shoot against this, but it's not enough. It's not enough for these big corporations. They need to bring this back and hammer these people for lack of ethics, because that's what's going on here. This lady is selling a book, and she's writing an article that will stoke fear about the very thing that she's writing a fantasy book about, and they're encouraging you to go buy her book. That's called advertising. And at one point, you couldn't say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, buy this car. This car is an amazing car. We did a test on this car. It's a great car. It's amazing. It's the best in its class. Well, except it's not really, and we were paid to say this. You couldn't do that before. That was considered crony journalism, where you team up with, or is it corporate journalism? One of those two, where it's like, it's selling out your principles on fair and good and balanced reporting, covering the truth, not speculation and insanity, and then saying, yes, we're interested in this. We're interested in this, the truth of this thing. Here is the truth of the thing. You decide. I remember that growing up, there was a bunch of shows where the journalist would end with, you decide. They would give you the facts, lay them out as best as they could, and then they would say, you decide. Well, now it's not facts. Now it's just opinion, 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 and things that are like factually wrong presented as truth. And then they said, oh, now you have to decide. But, if you choose the wrong path here, we're going to come and find you. And we're going to write
Make your life a living hell.
Yeah, we're going to make your life a living hell. And that is just terrible. And it's not good. And it's literally terrible.
And people wonder why I stay anonymous and don't show my face on YouTube. Yeah, that's why. Guys, just to sort of wrap things up, I'll reiterate what Saib said just a second ago. When it comes to people like this, they can annoy the heck out of us, I understand. But don't send any hateful messages to them. Don't interact with them. Honestly, when has that ever actually gotten anything anywhere? Work. Yeah, and people might be like, well, what about the whole Activision Blizzard thing? No, it's not the hateful messages that you're sending to these people that's doing this. It's the fact that they got caught doing what they're doing and people are seeking appropriate justice for it. It's not the hateful messages that are getting you there. So don't think that it applies in a situation like this. The only time, the only way that people like this will ever go away, and we've seen this happen in the past, with examples I won't cite because I don't want to stoke more controversy, but the only way that these people will go away is if you just ignore them. Just don't, talk about them, just debunk them like we are doing right now, and then just don't give them the time of day afterwards.
Yeah. Debunk it, don't attack, because again, attacking makes them a victim or a martyr. And it makes them appear as if their points had valid points to it. A lot of these people don't have valid points. And they're hypocrites. That's the other thing, is that they are complete and total hypocrites, and they're in it for the money. And this behavior is bad, but by focusing in on them, it does make them a bigger target. It gives them clout for certain things that they say. Just don't do that. Just don't do that. Find somebody who's making a reasonable counter argument and signal boost that.
Yeah.
A reasonable, healthy counter argument, signal boost those things, because that's the only way that we get out of this.
If you want to appear like the moral superior, do stuff like that where you're actually bolstering the voices of people who are level-headed and offering rational arguments. And then finally, if you don't want to parent your kids, then don't have them. Okay. just a word of advice. Anyways, wow, we went really long about those topics, but it's just a lot of really important stuff to talk about, especially when it comes to my beloved GTA and where it was and how it is now. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in to the Maximum News Show. It's always a pleasure doing this with Saib. Listen, if you want an audio version of the Maximum News Show, you can listen to it on your iPod, Android, iPad, Barbie CD player. I don't care where you listen to it, as long as you listen to it. If you want a version of that, just go over to my Patreon page, and look, you don't have to spend a whole lot to get an audio version of the podcast. It's only $1 Canadian. That's less than $1 American, and you can have every single episode for you to listen to whenever you're on the treadmill or just cooking dinner, as long as you're paying attention and not burning yourself, that sort of stuff, or going out on a walk. Please consider it. I'll put a link to that in the description box below. I want to thank Saib, as always, for his wonderful insight and, for helping to suggest the topics for these shows and commenting on them. For the show, rather. Saib, do you want to just tell people where they can find you online?
Find us online most places at the Triple S League. You can find us on Rumble, on YouTube, of course, and a bunch of other places. Check us out there. And tomorrow morning, we are going live. And by tomorrow morning, I mean Saturday morning. Saturday morning, I believe it's 9 o'clock Western Standard Time. Join us on the YouTube. We do some live streaming. We're also on Twitch. We do some live streaming of some content, and that changes almost every week. We just kind of do a variety of things. Last week we were playing The Ascent, and tomorrow we might be doing some community games. I'm not really sure. We're waiting for some of the big games to come out this year, such as Humankind and the big one obviously being Baldur's Gate 3. Right. That's kind of our baby right now. But we're going to be getting into a whole bunch of other games, so join us for that.
He's going to be trying to get me into that when, the new version of it comes out. And then you guys could just find me on all the relevant forms of social media, Twitter, YouTube, just at Max Starrett. As my name is spelled in the description box below in case you don't know how to spell it. Thank you guys again for tuning into the show. And until we do this again next week, just want to remind you, as always and as per usual, stay yellow.